Um, do you wanna jump into the professional scenario now? This one's a
Yeah, absolutely.
you must
You
have the background.
you want me to do it?
Yes, please.
Okay. So this is our professional scenario. And so Jess is a talented writer. She's 4 years out of college and she's working in the health and wellness team of a popular online magazine. And when she was hired, she was told that the topics that she would write about, that this would be a collaborative process. And the hiring team were super excited to hear her ideas and her life experiences because she previously was employed at a health and wellness magazine, and she was also a competitive snowboarder. And so Jess's supervisor is Jay. And Jay is someone who rose very quickly through the ranks, and his manner is quite direct, no nonsense, expectation driven. He's known for his rigidness and a lack of collaboration. Jess and Jay have weekly one-on-one meetings where the previous week's accomplishments, more often disappointments, and upcoming content and deadlines are discussed. So there's never any real time for Jess's ideas on content. The meeting is often highlighting Jay's disappointment for not meeting all the deadlines of the previous week. And to be quite honest, Jay's expectations would be hard for two people to accomplish, let alone one. And Jess often finds herself unable to speak in meetings and feels patronized, ignored, like a total failure, really. And she vows just to work longer hours. She's going to do better and she's just going to work more. When she recognizes herself falling into this old, unhelpful pattern, Jess decides that she's going to introduce the RISE model into her weekly one-on-one meetings with Jay. So the RISE model would really just help structure the conversation around their shared goals and would allow her to voice her ideas and invite a bit more collaboration with Jay. So a few days before their next meeting, Jess prints out a copy of the RISE model and explains each of the 4 steps of meaningful feedback. And so she shares that with Jay. And when she does it, the exchange, it might sound something like this. Hey, Jay, a friend of mine recently shared this collaboration tool with me. It's called the RISE model. And this friend, she also works in a creative field, and her team uses RISE to structure their planning and their debrief sessions. Would you be willing for us to give it a try at our next one-on-one meeting? Jay agrees, really, without even looking at the material that she handed to him. Jess realizes that she's going to need to slow the meeting down and address each of the steps as they work through it. Otherwise, Jay is just going to bulldoze through these one-on-one meetings like he always does. In this job, it's important to Jess. She's conscientious and wants to develop in her position. Jess knows that it's really like the onus is on her to advocate for herself. And she's hoping that RISE, the introduction of it, will be the start of better conversations with her supervisor, Jay. So when the weekly one-on-one comes around, Jess comes prepared. She has 2 copies of the RISE model, one for each of them to have in front of them and to reference. Jess starts the conversation by asking Jay to articulate their shared goals. Jay responds curtly, quality content on time.
And Jess responds, okay, with those goals in mind, what went well this week? Where did we miss the mark? Jess purposefully uses the term we to highlight that she and Jay work as a team. The slight shift in language keeps the focus on the goal and invites more thoughtful questions.
So Jay notes, you submitted your articles on time, but they seemed a little half-baked, and you didn't make much progress on the 3 new initiatives that I laid out on Monday.
Now, I'm already getting anxious with Jess. But Jess stands her ground and says, I agree. I prioritize the deadlines over the quality of my writing. With the introduction of the new initiatives, I am being stretched way beyond my capacity for both quick and quality turnaround.
So at this point, we're going to move into the inquiry stage. Like, we just got through some of that reflection, right? Which is, what is the shared goal? Quality content on time. And Jay says, the work that you submitted was not quality, but it was on time. And Jess is just simply acknowledging, yeah, I'm sorry, I was prioritizing deadlines over, what I wrote because you dumped 3 new projects on me at the start of the week. Right? So
all information.
all information, just information, folks. So then Jess inquires, and she says, look, I see the value of these new initiatives, and I wonder if there's a way that we can queue them up, organize them, and drip them out to support our other goals, right? We're always going to have these articles that we've got to put out on this cadence, on these deadlines. And so I'm wondering if there's a way that we can schedule this instead of it coming, sharply in waves. So, and instead of dismissing, that I'm sure makes quite a bit of sense to Jay, whose goal is just to do well in his position. And so what she's suggesting is not that they not do those things. She's just suggesting perhaps a more efficient way to meet all of their goals. And so Jay says, say more about what you mean.
I want to just highlight at that point that Jess's inquiry, it stays information-based, and there is some feeling in there, but it's not the all or nothing feeling that often happens in a type C interaction. It's not all about him. It's not all about me, but it's that collision of using information. How can we move forward? Which really, you can almost see the deflating the Jay's response of, it takes some of that power away. And now, like you said, because Jess is hitting on the things that are important, that she heard are important to Jay. Jay is now responding in an inquiring fashion, mirroring her.
Because a good idea is a good idea in this case. Can we do all of these things? So what Jess suggests and what she says is, I've looked at all of these details with these new initiatives, and they are not as time sensitive as our weekly content goals. So what if we parsed out the work for these initiatives over a couple of months? That way I could still have enough time to produce the quality of content that we both expect in this position.
And Jay adds, well, I need to be able to see the big picture at all times. What if we put these less time-sensitive projects into a tracking system so that you can update them with status updates as you complete the tasks?
Okay, so Jay is like surfacing another need of his, right? That's sort of illuminating maybe like some of his motivations and what drives him to interact the way that he does. As the manager or the supervisor, he has to have perspective on everything that's going on at all times. And so like his willingness to engage with this new idea has to also meet this criteria.
Okay.
Right. And so like Jess is now ideating on her previous suggestion, right? So she got a new piece of information and is ready to elevate. So, what she says is, yeah, absolutely. It might also be a good idea for us to schedule a monthly meeting dedicated solely to these longer term projects, which will free up our one-on-one meetings just to concentrate on the weekly articles. I have a lot of ideas that I'd like to share in those meetings.
Jay says, works for me. With the tracking system, I'll be able to see your progress, which is what I need to report to my manager. So we're all good?
All good.
Mm. So Jess's needs got met also because she's really excited to be able to share her creativity in that space.
Yes. And it doesn't mean her working more hours. It means her being more organized and efficient with these longer term goals, and basically plugging them in on the timeline when she's not rushing to meet the weekly deadlines for her articles.
Mm. So she was able to articulate her feelings of being overwhelmed without painting herself as deficient.
No, there's such a position of strength here. And if anything, Jay is recognizing that she is a willing and able collaborator and that together they could do so much more.
Wow. It's so interesting that the reason for her struggles was actually the piling on of new initiatives without this tempered timeline. So her suggestion of approaching it differently allows her to concentrate on the immediate goals while still making progress on these long-term projects. And it's just so important to note here the generative effect it has when you feel like you've been seen and heard.
And from a managerial standpoint with Jay, he was able to address in this meeting that the article quality issue that was anchored in their goal of writing articles, it wasn't a personal attack on Jess. It's just saying, this is the goal of this position. This is what we need to do as a department or as a team, because these are, part of the longer or bigger goals of our organization. And he was also able to express a need for some high-level oversight for the new initiatives and proposed a system that would allow him to monitor the work without sabotaging or sideswiping the one-on-one meetings with these new requests.
Mm. It just, to take this back into like the discussion about the RISE model itself, it's a beautiful highlight that you make the implicit explicit by just being able to kind of unearth these things that are living inside her. Her tendency as a type C would have been to double down, work harder, be so resentful of this person above her that just keeps bulldozing more information on her. But when she takes that implicit feelings of, wait a minute, this isn't working for me, I need to identify and honor my own needs. Can you tell us more about helping make the implicit explicit?
Yeah. Making the implicit explicit simply means shifting from something that is assumed or obscured and bringing it out into the light and making it clear, so that everybody can point to it and see it together. And as a framework, it's like that is the backbone of RISE, is that we're saying, hey, this isn't a mystery ability that we invoke as needed, from the core of our being. It's a skill. It's a set of skills. It's a competency that if we run through a shared process, and that shared process is what makes it explicit. Together, we are going to reflect. Together, we are going to inquire, suggest, and elevate. What that does is it creates some certainty for both parties as they engage in what could otherwise be a tense moment or conversation.